Something came flying at Zach's head. Instinctively, he swung his club in front of his face like a windshield wiper. There was a chalk of wood on wood, and the thwick of whatever he deflected in the darkness landing in the grass. The dark shapes sprang into action. Zach's heart froze as a half-dozen spear-wielding children charged from the forest. Their spear tips were leveled at Zach and the girls as if they fully intended on running them through. Something whisked past Zach's ears from behind and struck the leader of the smelly children dead center on the forehead, knocking him flat on his back as though he had been hit by a sledgehammer. Before Zach could even process what had just happened, another attacker barreled at him, intent on skewering him through the belly. His fencing training kicking in, Zach parried and sidestepped, whirling his club over his head to deliver a crushing blow to the back of his assailant's skull, sending him tumbling face first into the forest floor. A wave of guilt washed over him. He rushed to his attacker's aid. "Hey, are you okay? I didn't mean to do that. It's just you were coming so fast with that spear and..." Out of the corner of his eye, Zach saw another attacker lunging at him. He wheeled about, just in time to see an arrow plunge into his chest, the force knocking him flat on his back. Meanwhile, Kirby stood frozen, like a deer caught in headlights, as a spear-wielding attacker charged her head-on. "Run!" Alexis shouted, knocking another arrow and taking aim at Kirby's attacker. But Kirby didn't budge. Alexis was just about to loose another arrow when she caught sight of a dark shape directly behind her. She pivoted just in time, turning a potentially paralyzing piercing of her spinal column into a glancing gash across her side. "Why, you dirty motherfucker," she gritted. Clamping down on the spear shaft with one hand, she dropped her bow and reached for her dagger, as her adversary reached for his. Too bad for him, she was faster. She slashed his throat on the draw, head-butted him as he gurgled for breath before driving the blade straight into his gut. But she didn't stop there. She continued stabbing, again and again, in a rage-driven overkill. Alexis had saved herself, but Kirby was still in trouble. Her attacker was seconds away from running her through with his spear. Panicked, she let out a loud shriek as she instinctively swung her staff in a wide arc around her body. Not only did she clock the attacker lunging at her, knocking him into a bush, but she also caught another attacker, who she didn't even see, sneaking up behind her. Her whirling staff knocked him out as well. A lifetime of flag cord training saved her life. Morgan stood stock still, paralyzed by fear amidst the stunted bodies twitching and moaning amidst the pine needles. An arrow grotesquely protruded from one's head, while another thrashed about, dark blood spewing from its sucking chest wound. Suddenly, the dying creature shot out a gnarled hand, clutching Morgan's calf with filthy claws. Her screams filled the air as she jerked her leg against its iron grip. She was just about to faint from terror when she realized she was holding a tool, her wooden staff. With desperation, she thrust the staff at the creature's arm, yet it clung on unyielding. She struck repeatedly, as if she were killing a snake, until at last the creature released its hold, curling into a defensive little ball. Morgan squeaked and scurried away. The ambush apparently over, Zach looked around, his chest heaved as sweat dripped from his forehead. He stared at the little bodies lying under the moonlight. The forest was eerily quiet now. As far as he could tell, they were roughly 4 feet in length. They were wearing dirty rags and animal skins. Their faces, contorted and grotesque, didn't look like anyone Zach had ever seen. But what both stood out and confused him the most was the color of their skin. It was green. Little green men. Then another word, one he'd never thought he'd ponder with seriousness in his adult life, popped into his mind. His lips mouthed the word as though they had a mind of their own. Goblins, and not a single goblin was left standing. His eyes caught movement as he saw one crawling off into the trees. Part of him wanted to stop it and question it. Maybe it would tell him what in the hell was going on, but he was too afraid. His instincts told him that the danger hadn't entirely passed. Instead, he turned his attention to the girls. Kirby and Morgan, both wide-eyed and pale-faced, looked okay enough, shocked but otherwise unharmed. Alexis, on the other hand, was still stabbing her long-dead opponent. Zach ran over to her. "Alexis!" he called out. "It's over! He's done!" The redhead wheeled on him. Covered in blood and clutching a bloody dagger, she looked like an absolute maniac. Startled, she almost stabbed him before a look of recognition fell over her face. But then her eyes hardened again, and if Zack didn't know any better, he'd have sworn she was considering stabbing him anyway. See? She spat, her emerald eyes flaring with the scariest look Zack had ever seen on another human being. I told you they were little green assholes. To be continued.